When the original Legend of Zelda game released for the NES in 1987, it received critical acclaim for its emphasis on imaginative, open-ended exploration, where a player could go anywhere, do just about anything at any time. As the series evolved into future games such as A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, the games broke away from this open-world format in favor of a more linear structure, where worlds would open up segment by segment throughout the main questline, rather than being freely explorable spaces from the start. This style became the new norm in the series for many years to follow, until after the release of Skyward Sword in 2011, when the developers wanted to go back to the roots and reanalyze what made the series so great in the first place. After 5 long years passed, the legendary Breath of the Wild was finally released, which brought open-ended, imaginative exploration back into the franchise in the most immersive way possible. Besides having many similarities to the original Zelda in both format and gameplay, Breath of the Wild also contains tons of hidden references, similarities, and Easter eggs to pay its respects to the game that inspired it. So, for this video, I will be going over each and every one of these references that I have found within Breath of the Wild, and I cannot wait to share them all with you guys. With that said, let's get right into the video. Breath of the Wild's first callback to the original takes place at the very beginning of the game, when Link runs out of the Shrine of Resurrection onto a cliffside that overlooks the massive world of Hyrule. Besides being a really great opening to the game, this exact shot is meant to replicate the original Zelda 1 artwork that was shown in the NES manual booklet. In both of these games, Link is simply just thrown into the massive world of Hyrule without instruction, and it is up to the player to decide what to do and where they should go first. And I really think that the scene summarizes it perfectly within both games. To further establish this connection, Nintendo would eventually revive this piece of artwork in the style of Breath of the Wild, and the similarities are striking. The next reference I would like to share has to deal with a mysterious, recurring character from the original game. Throughout many of Hyrule's various caves and dungeons, you may stumble across this familiar, red-robed old man, who usually will offer tips and hints to the player upon encountering. This character serves as the only real guide to Link throughout the entire game, so it's safe to say that his role is quite significant. Now, fast forward to Breath of the Wild, and at the very start of the game, Link is also assisted by a mysterious, old man, who helps him with completing the many trials of the Great Plateau. Just like the original, this character often lurks in random areas and offers tips, advice, and even bits of lore to the player when spoken with. Probably the best connection between these two characters is the similarities on how they are first encountered in each game. In the original Zelda, Link starts the game off by spawning right outside of a cave, and upon entering is meted by the robed old man. This opening sequence is actually replicated within Breath of the Wild, as Link also meets this old man inside of a cave as soon as he leaves the Shrine of Resurrection, so these similarities are definitely no coincidence. The next set of references in this video have to deal with iconic quotes and sayings from the original game. Despite not having a whole lot of dialogue, the original Zelda still contains some of the most iconic quotes in gaming history, such as, "It's a secret to everybody," and "It's dangerous to go alone, take this." Many other games in the past have made references to some of these classic Zelda quotes, and Breath of the Wild is definitely no exception. In the game, if Link uses a Sheikah scope to create a light beacon on the map, you may or may not have noticed the ancient Sheikah letters running down the middle of it. Using a Sheikah to English translator, these letters can actually be decoded to spell out the phrase, "It's dangerous to go alone," which is the same exact quote that is said to Link when obtaining his first sword in the original game. The references don't stop there though, as another iconic line from Zelda 1 is hidden away within Breath of the Wild's Sheikah Towers. After climbing up and activating one for the first time, there is in fact more Sheikah letters that appear when the regional map piece is being installed to your slate. If the shot is frozen at the right time, you can see that these letters line up to spell the quote, "Master using it and you can have this." This is in fact a reference to what the old man says when obtaining the white and magical swords in the original game. Although this line is not nearly as iconic as the last one, I still appreciate how Nintendo secretly included all 3 sword-related quotes within the game. For this next segment of the video, let's discuss some of the similarities and references tucked away within the game's dungeons. In the original Zelda, dungeons were structured as a series of combat rooms intertwined within the labyrinth-like structure. Although the rectangular room format was not the most visually interesting, what I did like is how each of these rooms were laid out in such a way to form the shapes of different real-world objects, such as this moon, or this demon head. I always thought that this was a very unique and clever design choice, and I'm glad that the essence of this idea was rebirthed within Breath of the Wild's Divine Beasts. Just like the original, all the dungeons in this game are structured to resemble different animals, which is the only other Zelda game in the series to do this. Now, I don't necessarily think that this reference was exactly intentional, as these dungeons play out very differently to the original ones, but the similarities here are still definitely worth noting. However, the majority of the dungeon-related references actually have to deal with the final one from the original game, Death Mountain. In order to enter this dungeon, Link must find the overworld structure, Spectacle Rock, and blast a hole in it to reveal the entrance. In Breath of the Wild, this same exact Spectacle Rock structure is actually apparent within the game, but this time it's located within the Gerudo Wasteland region instead of Eldin. Although this landmark appears way bigger in Breath of the Wild than it does in the original game, it definitely stays more true to its name, as the bridge that connects the two rocks more closely resembles a pair of actual spectacles like the name suggests. Now, upon entering the Death Mountain dungeon in Zelda 1, there is one immediate difference from the other dungeons that you might notice right off the bat, which is its theme music. Although the first 8 dungeons in the game use the same, familiar dungeon theme, this dungeon has its own unique score, which is one playing in the background currently. Fast forward to Breath of the Wild, and this melody from the original is actually used within the game's Death Mountain music, but its subtle resemblance makes it very easy to miss. Here, take a listen. Notice it yet? This melody was very well integrated to still match the feel of this region, while still providing a neat little reference to fans who paid really close attention. Considering that the original game had an extremely small soundtrack, it's great to know that they managed to incorporate one of the lesser known songs of Breath of the Wild somehow. Before we wrap up the video, there is still one more awesome reference that I have to share with you all, that is easily the most hidden one yet, but it does require a little bit of background knowledge first. Although the original Zelda game came out in 1987 for the NES, the game originally released in 1986 for the Japanese Famicom, a whole year before America got it. Despite these games having a few regional differences, such as a slightly altered soundtrack and a few different gameplay mechanics, there is one big thing that separates these games apart completely, which is actually the game's title. Although we all know this game here as simply just The Legend of Zelda, in Japan, this wasn't the case, as the full game was actually titled The Hyrule Fantasy, with The Legend of Zelda as just a subtitle. At this time, The Hyrule Fantasy was the assumed name of the series, and The Legend of Zelda was just going to be the name of this one particular game. However, in order to appeal to a Western market, the game's name was shortened to just The Legend of Zelda for its 1987 release, and because of the name's wide popularity, it managed to stay as the permanent name of the series across all regions as we know it. The original The Hyrule Fantasy name has since been left in the shadows, until it made an extremely secret and well-hidden appearance in Breath of the Wild. Looking at the box design of the game's Master Edition, it may seem like nothing too special at first, just featuring the Zelda logo and some Sheikah lettering wrapped around the edges. However, these Sheikah letters can also be decoded, and after doing so, reveals that after roughly 30 years, the Hyrule Fantasy logo finally appears again on a box of a Zelda game. Nintendo really wanted to emphasize that this game was meant to be a grand callback to what made the series so great in the first place, and this Easter egg wrapped up that belief perfectly. Because of this reference was easily one of my favorites in the entire series. But anyways guys, that is all for the references and Easter eggs in this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already for more great Zelda content. Also, thank you very much to my amazing Patreon supporters who helped me out here. If you want your name featured at the end of all my future videos, please consider supporting, link below in the description. With that said, thanks again for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.